What's up, geometry? So this video is about kite properties. What you need to know about the kite properties, first of all, is the vocabulary real quick. Angle E and angle P, remember they're called vertical angles because these angles are in between two congruent sides. Alright, angle M and angle S are your non-vertical angles because they're in between sides that are not congruent. Okay, so the first kite property was that the non-vertex angles are congruent. Okay, so angle M and angle S are congruent. Angle S because they are non-vertex angles. Okay, so a type of problem that you would have to be able to solve is if I simply gave you that one of these angles was 65. Okay, if one of these angles is 65, then you automatically know that angle S has to be 65. So let's say this was a variable, right? You have a situation like this. Okay, you would just say that, oh, x is equal to 65. Alright, second type of problem will be when they give you the vertex angles. You have to be careful here. They're not giving you the non-vertex angles here. These are your vertex angles. So let's say I put a variable here, right? How would I find x? Well, you know that the non-vertex angles have to be congruent. So angle B, if angle B is x, then angle C also has to be x. Alright, so now this requires a little bit of knowledge from the previous past couple of lessons, but you need to know that the sum of the angles of a quadrilateral, a four-sided figure, alright, the sum of the angles add up to 360. And if you didn't know that, then you can use this formula to help you. 180 times n minus 2, where n is the number of sides. So the sum of the angles is equal to 180 times n minus 2. You can use that formula to help you if you happen to forget. But you're going to substitute the 4 here, right? N equals 4. And you're going to end up that the sum of the angles is equal to 360. So now what do? You just set up your equation. You add up all these angles, so 2x plus 150 is equal to 360. Okay, and then you just solve for x. Alright, so you get that 2x is equal to what is it? 210. Alright, and then you get that x is equal to 105 degrees. Alright, the other two properties of the kite have to do with the diagonals. Okay, so number one, if you draw the diagonal that connects the vertex angles, okay, notice that angle Y and angle W are your vertex angles because they're in between two congruent sides. So if you connect the diagonal that connects these two angles, what happens is that the vertex angles become bisected. They become bisected. So what does that mean? Well, that just means that those vertex angles are cut in half, right? Remember, bisecting means cut in half. Are they congruent to each other? No, we don't know that, right? We don't know that angle XYZ is the same as XWZ, but we now know that XYW is congruent to ZYW, and that XWY is congruent to ZWY. Okay. The second thing about the diagonals of the kite is that both of the diagonals together are perpendicular. Okay, remember, perpendicular means that they make right angles where they intersect, just like that. Alright, and not only that, but the non-vertex diagonal here, the diagonal that connects the non-vertex angles, this particular diagonal gets cut in half. So if I were to put a point here like point A, then I would say that XA is congruent to AZ. Alright? So those are your kite properties. Now you're gonna be able to solve a bunch of different problems having to do with this whole setup here. I can't really show you every example, but just be aware of what's congruent here. Alright, and that's gonna help you a lot. Okay. Notice that, you know, I think in class I covered the bottom part of the triangle. The bottom part of the kite, excuse me, right? And we made the discovery that triangle XYZ is actually an isosceles triangle, right? Which means that angle YXZ has to be congruent to angle YZX, right? So we also came to the conclusion that these angles have to be congruent as well. Okay, and by similar reasoning, right, if I cover the top part of the kite, you also have an isosceles triangle here, right? Look at side XW and side YZ. You see how those two sides are congruent, and you know, if two sides of the triangle are congruent, it's called isosceles. And then in an isosceles triangle, we know that the two base angles are also congruent. So these two angles would also be congruent here, right? So you just gotta play around with all the properties, see what other information that the properties can sort of lead up to. Alright, and hopefully this will help you solve all the kite problems. Alright, have a good one, guys.